Tuesday's ESG Week session is about to begin. I'd like to introduce to you your favourite host from Differentia Consulting, the Orange Dot.
Thank you, and welcome to Tuesday of ESG Week. That's right, every single lunchtime this week at 12 PM, you will learn about a solution that can help you with your ESG reporting and ESG data. However, I am just a dot, so let's find an ES genius to help us today. I wonder who it's gonna be. Dun! Today's ES genius is going to be Niall from Cyferd. With over 25 years of experience in data, analytics and BI, Niall brings a wealth of knowledge to his role at Cyferd. As Director of Business Value, Niall talks to organisations about their business, their strategy and their challenge, and then using this information, he leverages his vast experience to advise how they might gain value from their data and transformation. Well, I can't wait to learn a bit more about Cyferd, so ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Niall!
Hi, welcome to the Cyferd Showcase for ESG. Cyferd is a next-generation digital transformation company building a platform that revolutionises the way that users can create business solutions in the cloud. You can design, build and customize almost any type of business application. And we've taken an example of that with ESG and built out a template application to help you get value from your own ESG endeavours. When we've been working with customers over a number of years, we've been speaking to them about what makes sustainability, social initiatives and governance actually successful, and what are some of their challenges. And many organisations have reported that they've got KPIs, far too many KPIs, and very little gets done throughout the year. Instead, everything gets mounted up towards the end of the year, and as soon as the executives start asking about progress, etc., they then start having debates about what the right metric was, what the KPI should be, and what the target should be, rather than focusing on actually moving the needle and making change happen. So we've done some research trying to think what's the best way to tackle that and to help organisations drive sustainability and ESG and in a much more approachable manner. And the most obvious one that came to us was around that balanced scorecard. Many of us will remember from the last 20 years, Kaplan's balanced scorecard has been a very common attribute, especially about trying to drive finance and financial change. Well, in 2001, Robert S. Kaplan and David Macmillan, founders of the balanced scorecard, actually wrote an article in Harvard Business Review, reimagining the balanced scorecard for the ESG era. And we've studied this and taken a lot of the findings and recommendations that they make and put them into practice ourselves. So here's the overall framework that we've built out as recommended by Kaplan and Macmillan in the ESG. So they recommend that you should sit down with your executive and define what your ESG vision is. Declare your strategic ESG vision for, and as an example, 2030. Some organisations are doing 2040, some are doing 2050. Many right now are talking about a strategic vision for 2030. Identify what life would look like. What are the strategic ESG outcomes you'd expect to achieve by the time you get to 2030? Document what those are for sustainability, for environment, social, for governance. And then once you see what life could look like, think through some of the goals that you might have for your current year that will take you one step towards that. Identify those goals, map a series of goals out, and then taking Robert Kaplan's recommendation of how to get change to really happen in your organisation. It's not about setting targets, it's about identifying people. And what they say is plan for that change. That change happens when people take accountability. So identify those accountable resources and make everyone aware of who those accountable resources are. Put it on your capture, your system that you capture of all your information and all the progress and records. And then those accountable resources will actually want to create series of small projects. In some organisations, those projects might be quite large. So you've got a series of activities that Kaplan talks about. Those activities, the things that are going to happen for you to enact change. and assign those activities to responsible resources. In some cases, they might be assigned to project managers. In others, it might be a departmental owner. And only once you've done your vision, identified some of your outcomes, your goals, and defined activities, only then should you start identifying the KPIs. The KPIs are going to be measuring your progress towards your 2030 vision. The KPIs are not the end and the goal in their own right. They're the things that will help you monitor progress year upon year. In many organisations, this will be a 5, 10, 15, possibly even a 20-year progress. So in summary, have your annual planning, envisage what your future might look like, plan for change, manage that change through a series of projects or activities, and then review progress. And periodically go back and update your progress and capture progress as you're making it. Many organisations I've been working with are now reviewing their ESG plans on a quarterly or a monthly basis and tracking their progress against it and refining and updating the goals they might have year upon year. And we've built out this framework into an application that can help you track all of this. In addition to that, there are some areas where you might need some specialist help with additional capabilities. And we've built out some additional modules that you can add on to the ESG application. So if we look at that, we've got, for example, when you start planning change, we've got a PMO application. That PMO application can be used where you've got much larger, more complex projects. You don't need to put every activity that you might have in your ESG plans into the PMO application. Probably more the ones that are more complex or the ones that have got higher risk. Many organisations are going through a journey of involving suppliers in their supply chain, managing the supply chain around the ESG area. So we've built out, taken some of the standards that the GHG protocol have done and come forward with, and we've published those, taken them into Cyferd, built out questionnaires, and you've now got all of those questionnaire information around the inventory that you might have throughout your supply chain. We've got those as supplier questionnaires that you can send out to customers, to your supply chain. And those questionnaires can be filled in online and submitted back through the Cyferd platform. Again, review your progress, update the calculations as you go. The other area a lot of companies have been talking about a large degree of complexity is around just calculating your greenhouse gas emissions. And again, the GHG protocol have got a number of calculations and standards that they update each year. We've taken all of that and embedded it straight into our application. So we've got a GHG protocol for using the GHG protocol calculations. We've got a greenhouse gas calculator for your business. It has the ability to identify if you've got global business with offices in different countries, different states in the US, different countries in Europe, and all taking different electricity from different grid providers. It's got the ability to identify the various greenhouse gas emissions for each of those energy providers. And if you've got specialist contracts in place with a supplier that might be providing a different greenhouse gas calculation, we've got the ability to customize that and add your own personal ones on top. So let's just think that through. So we've got an overall ESG vision. We've got that ESG application that will help you with your framework. We've got these additional modules, the greenhouse gas calculator. We've got a supply chain questionnaire that you can get and send out. And when you've got more complex changes to be enacted, we've got a PMO application. So let's take a look at some of these different demonstration applications and actually bring them to life in their own right. So this is our ESG application, the overall framework application as defined by Kaplan and Macmillan in 2001 for ESG in their Harvard Business Review article. Here an organisation is starting to plan for how they would envisage their vision, their ESG vision for 2030. And the plan in 2022 is to grow and enhance our business sustainably. If we look back to 2020, it was purely about commencing the sustainability journey. And on the right hand side, we can actually see that the overall ESG progress for 2022, the year it's just finished, was sitting at 29.6% against the target that they're aiming for the year 2030. So they're making good progress after just 2 years progressing towards their 2030 strategy. I can scroll down and start to see we're making better progress in some areas than others. So we can see environmental progress is going very well at 27.4%. Governance is doing very well at 46%. But our progress in social is sitting at 20.6%. So we might want to look at that and try and improve that. But before we do that, let's start looking at the overall framework. The framework define your 2030 vision, which is grow and enhance our business sustainably, and then start identifying strategic outcomes and some goals. So we can start looking at our 2022 goals that we set out at the start of 2022. We had goals for environment, for social and governance. The goal, the strategic outcome that we wanted was to improve our environmental contribution by the year 2030. We've got 3 separate goals associated with that. We've got 8 KPIs and we've got 9 activities. The status overall is on track. For social, it's invest in our employees, customers and communities. Again, 3 goals, 8 KPIs and 8 activities, but it's behind plan. For governance, it's to enhance our sustainability governance. 3 goals, 8 KPIs and 8 activities, and it's on track. If we scroll down, remember I was saying Kaplan's approach is not to jump straight to KPIs, but to identify people. Who's going to be accountable for making these changes happen in the business year upon year? And here we've got the names: Bob Smith, Sales Director; Heather Smeagol, Head of Compliance; James Johnson, the COO; Jane Smith, the HR Director; Jennifer McEwen, the CEO; Leslie Lindsay, the Head of Product Development; and Smarty Sage, our CFO. We can see each of them have got a number of goals, a number of KPIs that they're being measured against, and a number of activities that they're going to be managing through with their resources in their organisation. If I scroll further down, I can very easily start to see the different goals that are progressing down and who owns those goals. So in the case of environmental, we've got 2 different owners, James Johnson and Heather Smeagol. James is accountable for reducing greenhouse gas and energy. He's also accountable for reducing the supply chain environmental impact. Heather, on the other hand, is accountable for reducing waste and improving recycling. We can see that James has got 3 KPIs for greenhouse gas and energy. He's got 2 for supply chain, and Heather has got 3 around reducing waste. We can see what the progress is and how many activities it each got. Again, you can see the same around social, with Jane being responsible for 5 KPIs that are driving investing in social for employees. Smarty Sage is investing in social for communities. Bob Smith is accountable for investing in social for customers. And then lastly, we've got Leslie Lindsay is responsible for innovating the products and services, and Jennifer McEwen around governance for enhancing business operational oversight, and Heather Smeagol around legislative compliance. We can see some are on track, some are ahead of plan, and some are behind plan. For any of these, if we want to go and look, we can actually simply select. So if I take, for example, invest in social for community, you can simply select that. It takes us now into the transactional records that we've got. Invest in social for the communities. We can see we've got 1 KPI, overall progress is 8%. If I scroll down, I can see that we've got some ESG activities, some KPIs, and some positive impact outcomes. So next, let's take a look at our ESG dashboard, our overall dashboard. How much progress are we actually making? So if I scroll down, I can see from an environmental perspective, the very first KPI we've got is measuring our greenhouse gas emissions. We can see that the target for 2030 is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from 10,000 to 2,500 tonnes of CO2 per year. We're currently at 7,500 tonnes, so that's 33%, a third of the way to our 2030 target, which is reasonably good. If I look down the next item, reduce our energy consumption, reduce our non-renewable energy consumption to just 10,000 kilowatt hours. We're currently at 45,000, so we're currently 22.2% of the way there. And we can scroll down and see each of the different items we've got. They're in red, amber and green status. Those in amber need some additional work on to progress and get them back on plan. So reduce waste and wastewater. We're currently at 45 litres per person per day. We're trying to reduce that down to 25. Increasing recycling of waste, doing very well. We're at 37.5% of the progress towards our target, which is to increase recycling from 20% to 60%. We're currently at 35. Reduce packaging and waste. Our 2030 target was to reduce the average waste per product sold from 500 grams to 125 grams. We're currently at 375 grams per product sold. We're about a third of the way there. Improving our supply chain impact, sourcing from more local suppliers, reduce business air travel. These are all the different metrics we had from an environmental perspective. On the social and governance side, we were looking at reducing health and safety incidents, improving customer experience. We're improving diversity and inclusion. On the governance, we're looking to innovate sustainable products. Improve employee engagement. We're currently at 62% employee engagement. We were previously in 2020 at the start of the programme at 57, trying to get a target by 2030 of 75. So we're doing reasonably well there. You can see we're looking at improving business resilience. We're not making such good progress, only 5.6% of the progress that we want to make. Current value is 15%, and we're looking that by 2030 we've got scenario plans in place for changing market conditions across 100% of our macro processes. Improve access and affordability across our products to customers so that they have access and affordable for 75% of our product range. We're currently at 35%, so we've got some work to do there and got some catching up. From a legal perspective, sustainability clauses, we're looking to put in place clauses to 80% of our contracts with just 10% so far. So we've still got some catch up to go there. If I look at investing in social and communities, we're looking to invest £500,000 per year. We're currently at 155,000. So we've got some way to go to improve on that, just 8% of the progress. Whereas enhancing ethics and governance, we're looking at reduce the number of ethics policy notifications we have to less than 1 each year. We're currently at 5. We were originally at 10, so we're halfway there. We're up 50% of the progress. You can see how this then starts to build up for the remaining KPIs around improving product labelling, improving labour practices, maintain regulatory compliance. Hope you'll agree it's a relatively simple dashboard layout that just shows at a headline where we are in terms of progress. If I scroll right down, I get to see where we are this year in light blue versus where we were for each KPI in yellow. And where we got further to the right, we're getting further in terms of the progress. So it's tracking against the progress against 100% completion against our 2030 target. The next area we're looking at from Kaplan's balanced scorecard, the next area that Kaplan talks around is taking some of those strategic outcomes and goals that your accountable resources have and build out a series of smaller projects that responsible resources or project managers can pick up. So here we can see a whole series of different activities. The very first one is reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from our offices and our site locations. Progress for the year was very, very good, completed by Judy Siteman, the individual projects that she had from that perspective. So there's great progress being made in some areas. Reduce energy from our sites. Judy Siteman, again, the person that's responsible, is currently at 40% of the way there. Project is currently on track. Petal Green has got 3 different activities. Ensure suppliers use renewable energy. Civil currently at 30% of the progress. And then there's some update from supplier 1, 2, 3, but unfortunately it's behind plan. Petal Green's looking to install water meters and reduce consumption. Again, only 25% of the way there. Procurement forced a tender, which ended up delaying the time. So you get the ability to put narrative. This is not just a dashboard. People need to put updates, put narrative and explanations. It's very human behaviour here that we're driving. and that's fundamental to change. So you can see they've got the ability to identify we're behind plan, but that's because procurement forced us to go out to tender, and that delayed the installation of water meters. The last one, reduce waste and improve recycling, 40% of the way on track. Overall progress, it's going okay. You can see out the flavour for each of these, and they vary across different areas, whether it's related to individual sites, whether it's products and packaging, and that will span, all of these activities will span right the way across from our environmental through social and through to governance. So as you can see, lots of activities underway, many on track, some behind. We've got one here, invest in community initiatives, is currently on hold. If I go and select that, Mary Smiley, HR business partner, and we can see here that we've got the work is currently on hold because we're awaiting a legal contract. So legal are working with us and helping from that perspective. If I scroll down, I can see we've actually got a Cyferd project that's driving this investment in community initiatives. And that project, because it's an actual project, not just a simple activity, it can be quite large and quite complex. So what we do instead is we actually track that in a PMO application. And I did mention at the start, we've got different applications that can help us in different ways. So here we've got our PMO application that tracks all of the different projects. We've currently got 30 projects, 26 are active, 3 have got open risks and issues. I can filter this down so it's only looking at the ESG applications. Remove, remove. Let's just look to see where the department contains the word compliance. So these are only the compliance-based projects that we're going to focus in on. So we've got a smaller number of projects now, all focused on compliance, all related to ESG. Update the product labeling so that it's clear. This is a project that's being driven. It's in progress. Stephanie Jobs is progressing it. Petal had that one around reducing waste and improving recycling. Again, progress. We've got due dates for end, re-engineer our packaging across product range, add sustainability clauses to legal contracts, invest in community initiatives. So these are the larger projects, if you like. These are the larger projects, if you like, that we're driving across, probably involving multiple resources from the organisation, and they can all be tracked within a PMO application quite nicely. So if I go back to my ESG application, we've looked at the strategic vision we've got. We can see our progress summary, the outcomes, the goals, the KPI dashboard that we have. We can see those activities and progress. The KPI dashboard identifies also those accountable resources. The activities identify those that are responsible. And then one last area that we've brought in to help organisations understand what's important. One of the pieces of feedback we do get from many customers is it's easy to measure and push the needle on some things, but they're not necessarily the most important things. So we've brought in one of a number of different industry standards that might be of interest. And this industry standard is from an organisation called the SASB, and they provide an industry framework for different industries against different ESG areas. And you can see here a range of different environmental, human capital, leadership, governance, social capital, different areas that they might be of interest. So for example, under environmental, we've got GHG emissions, air quality, energy management, water and waste management, which is different from waste and hazardous materials management, and ecological impact. And then you can see for different industries where they see, and the SASB industry standard recognises that something is material and therefore it should be fundamental. If you're in one of those industries, you should be tracking and measuring against those areas. You can see we've brought in a number of different industries, and it's very easy for us to add additional ones in if they're of interest to you and you've got interest in building this out in your application. So we did talk as part of the overall framework around some of those additional applications. One of those is simply the ability to send out questionnaires to your supply chain and track them. So here we've got a GHG inventory reporting application that allows you to send out lists of questions to be filled in for different scope of emissions to your supply chain. The suppliers can then fill all of this information in online within the Cyferd platform, and then that can then automatically calculate and feed into your own greenhouse gas calculation. The questionnaires that are sent out are all from the GHG protocol. They recommend the certain types of questions that you should be asking from your supply chain. You can scroll down, you can see the different types of question, the different scopes, the different emissions, etc., that you might have across your supply chain. And then your suppliers just choose those fields that are most appropriate to themselves, complete it, submit it, and save it. And they might be doing that on an annual basis, or in some cases, organisations are looking to get things updated quarterly. Once you've got all that information, the obvious thing to do is to come in and start looking and calculating your own greenhouse gas emissions. So this is one type of application that we've built. Again, this is based on all the calculations that are in the GHG protocol website that got available, and they have provided available energy and greenhouse gas emissions for different electricity providers in different states in the US, in different countries throughout Europe, by different vendors, and we've got each of the different type of calculation being captured, whether it's coal-fired power stations, whether it's gas-fired power stations, totally renewable energy in some countries, or whether you've got a mix of some versus another. And the various gas calculations are all included in here. You simply have to put in the kilowatt hours and identify where your energy is being consumed. So here we've got total emissions 37.7 tons of emissions. Scope 1 is sitting at 21.6, Scope 2 is 5.6, and Scope 3 is at 10.25. If we scroll down, we can see the number of facilities we've got in Canada, United Kingdom, and the US, the different types of city, and therefore the grid location that you might have. And it's that grid location that's then driving the greenhouse gas calculations. If I scroll down, you get to see all the information that's being put in for Scope 1. There are 6 Scope 1 records. You can see the details behind these, whether it's gasoline, gas, motorbikes, etc. All information that's driven straight from the GHG protocol website, and you can capture that systematically here. And you've got the Scope 2. This is starting to look at the different facilities and the fuel type. In this case, it's got a grid coming from AKGG, which is, I'm guessing it's Arkansas. It's a US facility, and therefore you'll be able to capture the amount of emissions. You've got the volume of kilowatt hours. There's 100,000 kilowatt hours, the CO2, the CH4, the N2O, and the biofuel, the CO2, and the kilograms of CO2 per unit. So you've got all of that calculated for you just by putting in the number of kilowatt hours that are being consumed. And then you get the outcome, which is the overall tons of CO2 emission. And then lastly, the Scope 3, as you get more information from suppliers, from your own passengers, your own employees that are driving in passenger cars, etc. All of that information can be captured in your Scope 3 emissions coming in here. And then this application then tracks everything and can be feeding straight back in. If I go right back where we started to our KPI dashboard, the greenhouse gas emissions is just feeding into one single item, which is this item here, reduce our greenhouse, currently sitting at 7,500 tons of CO2 per year. So the CO2, the greenhouse gas emissions, is a fairly complex area just to capture in its own right. So we are capturing that here. To summarise, we've got an overall ESG framework application that helps you plan out your vision, the strategic outcomes you're aiming for, your individual goals year upon year, be able to track those goals and allocate them to accountable resources who can set up projects with responsible resources driving those activities and ultimately capturing all of your KPIs. That's all within an ESG framework application. We have a number of additional modules, the greenhouse gas calculator that comes from the GHG protocol, supplier questionnaires that can be sent out to help you ensure that your full supply chain is on board with your 2030 vision. And we've got a PMO application that can help if you've got much larger or more complex projects. It helps you track the progress, the assigned resources, and the risks that you've got associated with that. So overall, a fairly rigorous approach rather than just tracking KPIs. So thank you for your attention today. Hope you found this of benefit. And by all means, reach out if we can be of help, if there's areas you'd like some further information on. Thank you very much.
A big round of applause for Niall, everybody! Oh look, there goes Niall now! Bye Niall! Thanks for stopping by! If you enjoyed today's session with Cyferd, you might want to come back for Thursday's session, which will feature Matt from Cyferd, who will go into even more detail about using Cyferd, but this time with Click. And if all things Click get you going, well, you might want to come back tomorrow, where Ian is going to be giving us a fantastic case study about how Infinity and also Click can be used for ESG data and reporting. There'll also be a mystery case study tomorrow. Ooh. If you'd like to learn more about ESG, please do come along to www.differentia.consulting, or you can write a message to yours truly by sending an email to marketing@differentia.consulting. Thank you for attending this session of ESG Week. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow, but in the meantime, take it ESGZ. Bye for now.